We recorded that conversation back in 2014. David has now been out of prison for more than a year. How has life changed for him since he was released? Well, let's ask him. We welcome back David McCallum, who joins us now on the line from New York City. It is so good to see you again, David. So let's ask, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Steve. Thank you for asking.
Now, what defines pretty good? What makes life pretty good right now?
Wow, just being able to be out of that place, and just being able to adapt to a place that I've left a long time ago, and just to come back into society again, and be able to spend a lot of time with my family and friends and those sorts of things, and do some of the things that I've often dreamed about when I was incarcerated. So just to have the opportunity to do those things now is definitely rewarding. For sure.
Have you got yourself a job yet?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, yes.
What you got?
Well, right now I'm working for the Manhattan Legal Aid Society. So I work for the Juvenile Rights Division. I'm a support staff member. So haven't been at the job for a little over 6 months now, and I have to say that I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. It's a very rewarding work for me, and just to be able to get up in the morning and go to work every morning, for me, it's just a thrill.
Well, you do know that there are lots of people out there who find it kind of a drudgery to get up every day and go off to do a job that they're not thrilled with. Have you experienced any of that yet?
No, not quite. I think for me, I guess one can say that it's a lot of adrenaline, a lot of emotion still. But I think for me, having been in that place for so long and never really had the opportunity to have what I would call a real job, for me, I take nothing for granted. I really enjoy what I'm doing. It's the kind of work that I wanted to do from the very beginning. And just to have the opportunity to get up in the morning, perhaps 5 o'clock every morning, just to be able to go to work. And to me, it feels really good. At some point, I guess it will wear off. But for me, at the moment, it's working perfectly.
Glad to hear it. David, what was it like when they handed you your first paycheck?
Wow, for me, it was really surreal because, again, never had a job before, so I never knew what a pay stub would look like. So when they actually handed me my check for the very first time, I was really stunned, really. I think I was sort of numb to some extent, but at the same time, knowing that I actually earned the money, it felt really good.
Now, David, did you notice when they handed you the pay stub that they actually do deduct a lot of the money that they pay you for things like taxes and other things? Did you notice that?
I sure did. In fact, I recall showing my mom for the very first time, and as I'm showing my mom the check, I'm looking at it while at the same time she's looking at me, and I'm saying to myself, "Oh my God, what happened here?" I almost wanted to cry in front of her, but of course I had to put on a brave face just to show how happy I was. But although I was really feeling it inside, just the fact that they took so much money for taxes. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I've often read about these things while I was incarcerated, of course, but to actually have it happen to me was, wow, it was very, very disappointing.
Disappointing. So, David, are you now part of the Republican chapter of the Tea Party in upstate New York, or what's the story?
Oh, wow, no. As a matter of fact, I'm actually, I would like to classify myself as an independent.
Independent,
I think sometimes yes. I think sometimes when we take sides in this political battle, so to speak, I think we sometimes get lost in what really needs to be done, for all people. So I try to be an independent thinker, and I think for a very long time it's got me to a very good place.
Well,
so
I guess
I'm going to stick with that.
I guess you're going to have a chance to vote for president for the first time in your life. Do you have a candidate yet?
Actually, I don't. In fact, I'm actually leaning towards someone like Bernie Sanders, but unfortunately, I guess regarding the political landscape probably doesn't necessarily warm to him. But I think for me, at least at the moment, he really seemed like a better candidate in my opinion, but he would definitely be someone I would really take a really good long look at, that's for sure.
Let me ask you about some things that I suspect everybody who's watching you right now takes for granted, but we have to remember that you went away so long ago. You've missed so much. For example, have you ever used a smartphone?
No, I have not.
Do you have one now?
Yes, I do.
So what's that like trying to learn how old are you now, David?
I am 46 years old.
So you're 46 and you are using a smartphone for the first time in your life. What's that like?
Wow, it's actually frustrating, confusing, exciting, all those things wrapped into one. I think for me, technology, it's really, I mean, it's always evolving. So I have this phone for basically a little over a year now. And I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate certain systems on the phone. But for me, I think because I have a pretty good support system, a lot of good family and friends to kind of help me around and show me some things, and even colleagues at work been able to share some of their expertise with me, so to speak. So I think from the standpoint of learning technology, it's been pretty eventful, but at the same time, as I said earlier, it's also been very frustrating too. But you know what? I'm not going to complain, Steve, because I'd rather have these are good problems in my opinion. So I'll be fine.
I hear you on that. Now, of course, before you were sent away, wrongly convicted, had you ever been on an airplane before in your life?
No, I have not.
Have you been on a plane? Well, you've been on a plane now, yes?
Yes, I have. I've been on a few planes, actually. You know, my very first trip was, of course, to Montreal, Quebec. And I went out there with my attorney. And I think he was looking, I guess he was kind of suspecting that maybe I was a bit nervous and all those sorts of things. But for me, I really wasn't. I was really excited and anxious, really, because when I was incarcerated, I had a lot of family and friends, particularly a lot of friends, come to visit me, and they used to always share their travels with me in terms of getting on and off planes. And so I used to listen to their stories a lot, obviously, and so I said to myself, you know, if I ever got the opportunity to get out of this place and be able to travel on a plane, I'm not going to be afraid, I'm not going to be scared, because I just remember some of their conversations, which sounded to me so exciting to do. So when I got on the plane for the very first time to Montreal, it was fantastic. And so my second trip to Toronto was even better, because it was you know, a pretty good flight, and the stewardess on board, they sort of welcomed me, they clapped for me, because some of my friends said that that was my second flight, you know. So it was a good experience traveling from New York to Toronto. I always enjoyed that trip.
No
Been there
moment,
5 times so
no moments of nervousness on the flight?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit nervous at times, because there's something called turbulence, and when I experienced that for the first time, you know, your eyes get big, you know, because you don't. But at least for me, I had no idea what was really going on here. But you know, you know, for me, you try to say, well, okay, I've heard these stories before, and everything's fine. But you know, your heart skips a beat or two every now and then when as things comes up. But again, it's part of the experience of flying, and I'm not necessarily used to flying, but don't particularly care for it that much. But it was exciting, and it's exciting at times to do it. So I'm just glad to have the opportunity to do that.
Now, of course, one of the things that you would not have been permitted to do when you were behind bars because of your improper conviction was to date. So I'm going to ask you now, are you dating anybody, or have you figured that scene out yet?
Oh, that scene's been figured out about 6.5 months ago. I mean, I had the opportunity to meet a very, very nice woman named Valerie, and me and her has been together a bit over 6 months, and we are going pretty good so far. And in fact, I met Valerie on a dating app called Tinder. And so, you know, got on the dating site, and that's, of course, Tinder is one of those apps where you sort of message someone when you meet them, and you can either swipe right or swipe left. But fortunately for me, and equally fortunate for her, we both swipe right, and so we've been together ever since. We have a pretty good relationship so far.
Isn't that wonderful? So I guess you are figuring out this smartphone, online, cyberspace technology pretty well.
I am, but I would have to say Facebook, I guess me and Facebook, I can do without Facebook. I think when I first got out in terms of Facebook, I was really messaging a lot of people, sort of friending a lot of people, not really realizing what I was actually doing. So for me, I've been on Facebook for some time now, and I don't really care for it. I think privacy to some extent is important, and so I want to try to keep it that way.
David, I know you've seen the documentary of your life, so you've seen a movie, but you know, that's a documentary and it's about you. Have you gone to just a regular, any kind of Sunday afternoon movie that has nothing to do with you, just pure escapist entertainment? And if so, what'd you see and what'd you think?
Wow, absolutely. So for me, very good question. Thank you. Yes, I have. The very first movie I saw since when I was out of prison was a movie called Broken. And, you know, the movie itself was very inspirational and motivational. And for me, I used to always see or hear previews of this movie when I was incarcerated. And of course, when I was home, I saw promos of it on television. So this movie is about an individual who went to war. He was a track star early in his years and went to war, and he was brutal. He was basically abused, you know. But the fact that this guy had a lot of courage, a lot of strength and determination to survive what he was going through, it kind of reminded me and kind of brought me back to some of the trials and tribulations that I was experiencing when I was incarcerated. So that movie was, I think, the ideal movie for a person like me to see, just to sort of remind me that it was a fight to get out. But going to the movies was a very good experience for me, because I can recall going to the movies as a kid, eating popcorn, those sorts of things, and just sitting in the theater enjoying a really good movie. It felt real good to do that.
Wonderful. Now, having said that, you know, some things in New York have not changed. Well, I don't want to be unfair about this, but let's put it this way. There are still tense relationships from time to time between officers in the New York PD and young black teens, which is what you were once upon a time when you had your conflict with the police. And I know you're suing the estate of the deceased officer who improperly put you behind bars. When you look out at the criminal justice situation in New York City right now, what are you seeing?
Wow, it's very sad, to be honest with you, because I know back in 1985, of course, when me and Willie was arrested, there was always heightened situations with the community and law enforcement. You know, so when you look back and look at that then and now, they're very similar. There's similar patterns. Today is very sad, but I know they have a movement called Black Lives Matter, and when I think about this movement, I'm not necessarily sure what that means anymore. Does it mean law enforcement? Does it mean black on black crime? I'm not sure exactly what that movement means anymore, which is kind of sad, at least in my opinion. But I think when you look at the criminal justice system today, it's vastly unfair, especially when you look at the incarcerated rates of young African Americans and Latino men and women, for that matter. It's really sad, and unfortunately here in New York City, you know, the public, it's very scared to death, and should be in some regards. But at the same time, the system is very unfair, and it really treats young people, I think, very unfairly. We look at the unemployment rate of young people, and you know, we often complain here in New York City about young kids hanging out on the streets, doing these sorts of things. But I often say, where are the jobs for these young men and women? You know, for them to sort of keep themselves busy. So when you couple all these things together, you're going to come up with a situation where violence is going to resonate throughout New York City, which is doing now. So when we talk about the crime rate, there's a particular reason why the crime rate is very high. So,
David, in our last minute here, I know there were a lot of people who predicted and hoped that when America got its first black president, race relations would improve. What do you see?
Well, unfortunately, that's not the case for me. I think, me personally, when I judge President Obama, I prefer to judge him on what's happening in the community in which I live in. So when I see these sorts of things that haven't changed for a large extent, I look at it. It's very unfortunate. I know for me, for example, and maybe this just because I've been recently released from prison a little over a year ago. People are prejudiced in their own different ways. For example, on a train, you'd be on a train with people and crowded people, and you want to try to stay out of people's way and out of people's faces and those sorts of things. But it's there. It's always going to be there, unfortunately. And I use the word always very, very loosely, because for me, in order for these things to change, I think education has to become the number one priority for all American people and all people in general, for race relations to improve, especially in the city, especially in a place like New York City. So I hate to paint a bleak picture there, but that's sort of my experience, at least so far, with the hope and expectation that things can somehow change in the future. Well,
my hunch is that you're going to be that change. I got a feeling that because of what you've been through, you're not going to waste your life. You are going to be a constructive force for good going forward, and we wish you just all the good luck in the world in that endeavor. Great to spend some time with you, David. Thanks so much.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Steve. And I'd really like to say a special thanks and special shout out to the people of the city of Toronto. For a very long time, they've treated me very well, and I'll never forget what they've done for me during my time incarcerated and actually during my post-release. So I'd like to thank the city of Toronto for treating me so well.
Come visit anytime. I know you've got lots of friends here. Thanks, David.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.